Welcome to Fortnite Origins, where I'll be covering certain topics such as characters, factions, and realities. And one of the most notable factions I'll be covering are those from the Imagined Order, the Last Reality, and the Seven. When it comes to Fortnite Origins, I present obvious evidence to cover most of my claims, as well as something that is from the past, present, and future, and also from major chapters such as Chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and currently Chapter 7. So sit back, relax, and to all my loopers out here, let's learn some lore. Well guys, after that successful vote that I did a couple of days ago, looks like the majority of y'all wanted to have the Herald Fortnite Origins to be out, and I'm giving it to you guys. And as you can see right here on my locker, I have the Herald, who is known to be one of the members of the Last Reality who was responsible for the destruction of Reality Zero in Chapter 3 Season 4, as well as chroming the rest of the Seven, including the Scientist, the Visitor, and the Origin, and take them to the Last Reality and reshape them. And she is known to be a messenger because she is announcing everybody across Reality Zero, especially for the loopers and the Paradigm, about the arrival of the Nothing, the leader of the Last Reality. And there's a lot more questions and answers about the Herald of the Nothing. What reality did she came from? Why did she join the Last Reality in order to destroy Reality Zero and take over the 0 point? And most of all, where did she go after Chapter 3 Season 4, as well as her whereabouts, if she survived or did she die during the live event Fracture? Because if you could take a look, the last time we saw the Herald was not just that she merged herself with the reality tree, but in fact, we could see that in the middle of the Chapter 4 island, Asteria, we could see what is left with the Herald, which is nicknamed the Herald Tree according to the files. And as you can see, there's a hole in the back of it, indicating that she might have escaped after she destroyed Reality Zero and it formed again due to Zero Fusion by the Paradigm. Because for years, there has been a lot of theories about what happened to the Herald, especially when the tree is somehow breathing in some ways, and people arguing if she is alive and if she died. Her whereabouts are still unknown to this day, unless Epic Games gives like an explanation or probably a teaser, especially for this survey skin, which indicates the Herald's return from this, which she turned herself into this amber-like woman now. Because if you don't even know, amber doesn't form until millions of years after tree sap exited from ancient trees, and as a result, it becomes trapped to the point where the pressure and the heat combined results in this fossil that looks like this. And for example, this is what amber looks like, with an ant trapped inside. And it might be the same for the Herald's case, since she was able to merge with the reality tree, and all of that 0 point energy and the ember combined with the chrome would result in the Herald's transformation, which is some sort of metamorphosis or something like that. But yeah, without further ado, let's get to the lore of the Herald. Now, as we take a look at the Herald skin, we can actually see that it's actually a Prozerian species, meaning it's actually related to the Bloom skin as we see over here. And if you compare the Herald and Bloom, they almost look similar, except the Herald looks more humanoid and Bloom looks more plant-like, meaning that the Herald is more likely humanoid type Prozerian, probably mixed with human DNA or something like that, but it's very unclear. But despite all of this, she might have been from like a reality where it was ruled by the Prozerians before it was taken over by the Last Reality, and as of unknown time of Fortnite, we can already tell that the Last Reality and planet where the Herald and Bloom come from are all in the same reality, the reality of the Last Reality, hence the name. And it's pretty clear on why she was the Herald of the Nothing in the first place. Similar to what happened to Bytes even during his quests, where he joined the Last Reality thanks to the Nothing communicating with him, giving him gifts, and have him do some trials, become a chrome human. Similar incident must have happened to the Herald in her planet, where she was required to complete a lot of trials, especially for the Nothing to prove her worthiness by destroying multiple realities. Similar to what the Cube Queen did, so did the Cube King. But it was at the time during the Cube King too, because mind you, the Origin has known the Herald for a very long time, because it's like the Origin's right-hand woman before the Cube Queen was even there. And it's pretty clear on after the Herald was able to complete all these trials, she was able to have the power of Chrome, which is basically the nothing itself. And for some unknown time, the Herald began to destroy multiple realities alongside of the alien fleet of the last reality with the use of the sample of Chrome. And what Chrome does is it's actually a cell organism that does psychokinesis at rapid pace. And if binded to a person, it will be able to make its mental capacity very so straight to the point where the person will become very evil or zombie-like figure, similar to what the Cubes does to most of the loopers during Season 5, Season 6, and later on Chapter 2, and the Storm when it took over the Save the World reality, which turned people into husks. A similar incident happens with the Chrome, but what's even worse with Chrome is that it can actually reshape people's existence into something else, meaning it's as worse as Cubes and the Storm itself. And the Herald was able to gain this power to the point that she becomes immortal in a way where every time people try to attack her, similar to what we saw in her boss fight and Fracture itself, and when she gets shot, the Chrome actually uses itself as a bulletproof vest in a way where she doesn't get a lot of damage. But despite all this, it is basically very unknown and very unclear as to what Herald's past looked like. But all we know about is that she is from the last reality. She joined the last reality after the Nothing got in contact with her and became the Cube Monarch's right-hand woman. Despite that, she is a fan of the Cubes because if you take a look at the structures of the Chrome she makes, it's hexagons, indicating corruption cubes. If you take a look at her throne in Herald's Sanctum, you could also see a hexagon shape indicating a corruption cube itself, meaning she could also be linked to the cubes, but it's still unclear, but it could be a possibility. And despite that she is part of the alien fleet of the last reality, it makes it all clear as they power the cubes to operate their motherships and the cube's cradle itself. But the biggest impact to the Herald's life was Chapter 2 Season 8, where after the last reality failed to take Reality 0 and destroy it and take the 0 point and bring back the Nothing, after the Cube Queen drowned in water, thanks to the Foundation, Jones, the Scientist, the Visitor, the Cube Queen ended up not dead, but actually disappeared in thin air into a limbo reality, which she cannot escape from. And as a result, this caused the Herald to become so enraged to the point that she sees this as terrorism, and the last reality wants to take revenge of the Seven for what they did to their beloved queen. And the Herald wants to go after the other 7 members, including the Paradigm, the Origin, the Imagine, and the Order, because they might be involved in this too, along with the war against the Imagine Order. It was basically a calculated distraction for the last reality to take over. And despite all this, the Foundation in Chapter 3 Season 1 already got these warnings already about the last reality's implemented attack after the Imagine Order's disbandment, according to his quotes.
But until we set the 0 point free, we'll be facing threats like the last reality, and worse. There will be no escaping it.
Indicating that very soon, the Herald would strike in a silent pace with the use of the Chrome. But before she makes her huge plan to take the 7, she decides to use this orb-like structure to watch the 7 closely as to what they do. From the events of Chapter 3 Season 1 to Chapter 3 Season 2 during the war against the Imagine Order lost, even if they try to build a collider and Geno fakes his death and starts rebuilding, the Imagine dies, meaning the Herald has no other way of trying to get the Imagine because she's already deceased. There is a huge chance that she might get the snapshot of Imagine later on. And then after the war, the 7 have peace, as you see in the trailer, and when this zooms out from the reality tree, look at that. This is the very first time we've seen the Herald, and as you can take a look, you can see the blue eyes, the purplish hair, similar to what the Cube Queen has, but the difference is she's a Pluxarian, a humanoid-like species of plant-like figure, who's very different from the Cube Queen, but is the same. And you can see her watch the entire Reality 0 through the reality tree through her orb, knowing that she's gonna succeed her plans on destroying Reality 0 by making a massive distraction, and had no other choice but to use a small sample of Chrome to capture the members of the 7. And to do so, it has to be very silent and small paced, and its psychokinesis needs to slow down a bit so that her plan can work. And the orders given by the Nothing, it makes it all clear. She attempted to take the Foundation, but it was unsuccessful, and the Foundation ended up escaping to Ice King reality. Then she ended up trying to take the Order. Although partially successful, the Order wasn't able to make it out on time, and she ended up escaping too. But the only member that she was able to get silently was the Snapshot Imagine, which she hasn't come back ever since. Despite that the real Imagine's already dead, she was able to chrome the snapshot Imagine, meaning she is probably lost to the chrome at this point. And then she ended up trying to take the Visitor, but again, unsuccessful, so she has an even bigger plan. She had to reduce the size of the chrome because, if you don't know, many members of the last reality who are binded to the Nothing and connected to the chrome usually control the chrome in a way where they can actually expand it and then shrink it back to its small size. And she uses that advantage for the scientist to collect the sample and bring that with him alongside of the Visitor who survived, the Origin, the Paradigm, and they go to that underground lab where the Herald will make her very huge attack on the 7's underground biotechnology lab, which causes Fortnite Chapter 3 Season 4. And you guess what happened, guys. Once Fortnite Chapter 3 Season 4 arrives, this is where her main attack begins. She decides to implement a plan where she has to surprise her appearance to the 7 by chroming the scientist, the Origin, and then the Visitor. And if you take a look at that trailer over there, the Origin is very distraught as to what the Herald is doing because he has been sensing the Herald's movements for a very long time now, similar to what the Foundation and how he sensed it, because he survived the Nothing before and he survived it again. And then the scientist goes on to study the chrome, but the chrome ended up breaking out of its slide and chroming the microscope, ended up chroming the scientist and reshapes him, taking him to the last reality. Then the Origin ends up getting attacked, and as the Cube King of the last reality, well, former Cube King, he's about to become the Cube King again. And then we see the Visitor Reality Zero, who also got chromed, and as a result, the Paradigm is the last one standing. And she was so horrified to the point that she hears a female laughing maniacally in front of her face, and the Paradigm had no other choice but to get out of the bio lab and escape. And once she escapes, the Herald begins to chase after the Paradigm by chroming more of the entire ecosystem and terrain of the entire sanctuary. And as a result of this, the Paradigm ended up getting trapped by a chrome tornado, and she gets ejected across the sky to Loot Lake. And this made it clear as the Paradigm noticed that the 0 point is there, so she decides to have the artificial machine intelligence engine Amy to make the coordinates to her home reality 659, where she could get help from the reality warriors to counter the chrome. And as you take a look over there, the Paradigm escapes, and the 0 point just glows to the point that the Herald attracts to the 0 point, and this is where it ends here. And as a result of this, even the 0 point tried to warn the loopers multiple times, but nobody didn't even care as there is peace in the island. Well, peace in quotation marks. Not really, because they still need to counter the last reality, even though it was already too late at this point, because now that most of the 7 are gone now, and it's only the Paradigm, reality is all doomed. And as a result, the Herald turns the Sanctuary into her massive palace, Herald's Sanctum, where if you take a look at the inside, there are a lot of chrome everywhere and there's a lot of hexagons. You can see her throne with the cube shape over there. If you take a look at the Herald herself, she is actually observing the reality tree through the same orb as she used when she was spying on the 7 and the loopers and the rest of the other people from different realities to make her attack very calculated. And this was all calculated to the point that it is very successful. And all because what happened to the Cube Queen, it makes it all clear. As the Herald is growing more interested in the reality tree, the Paradigm is preparing the plans needed to take out the Herald according to the Origin. And most of all, Jones and the loopers begin encrypting the messages through the reality tree routes, and we're getting contact from the Paradigm from Reality 659 about the arrival of the Nothing.
You're there. You can hear me. I have to keep these transmissions short, but I'll send everything I know. Stay safe, and listen. There will be no second chances here. The Nothing is...
Did she say nothing? Or the Nothing, capital T, capital N?
Oh, don't pretend you don't know. If there's a way through this, we'll need to know everything about this. Starting with the chrome. We ran some experiments, but you'll probably need more data.
But unfortunately, because of the Nothing being an all-powerful force, it corrupts the messages and silences the Paradigm from spreading the message to all of the inhabitants of Reality Zero. Because of the Herald's preparations of destroying the whole Reality Zero, Jones and the loopers think that it's time to go to war against the Herald. And as a result, it failed very miserably, to the point that the chrome is keeping the Herald alive so much that it is impossible without it being a massive bulletproof vest that is artificially organic, implemented by the Nothing. Because of this catastrophic failure, the Herald ended up disappearing in the chrome and hid for a while, only as the Paradigm realized this situation where all reality is going to end because of their failure to counter the Herald and the chrome. Meaning the only way to save all of the inhabitants of Reality Zero is to evacuate almost all of them and send them into different realities until the war with the chrome is over. And as a result, some of the remaining inhabitants of Reality Zero remained to fortify the reality tree in order to fight back the Herald and the chrome, and prevent her from reaching the reality tree, or else the consequences might come through. However, that all changes as more time passes and the Herald, the Nothing, and Bites, who recently became a warrior thanks to passing all of the trials and is now binded to the chrome, together attack all of Reality Zero by spreading chrome everywhere, starting Fracture. And as you take a look, the reality tree is fortified, and you can see the loopers getting ready to fight back the Herald and the chrome, and a lot of chrome tornadoes are starting to spread across each and every single part of Reality Zero to spread it even faster. And as you can take a look over there, this one particular chrome tornado is where the Herald is going to make her final appearance in front of the loopers to chrome every single one of them. And as you can see with the menacing blue eyes and the flaming pink hair on her head. And as you take a look, the loopers tried their best to shoot the Herald with their assault rifles, pistols, shotguns, but it's not working because the chrome is a bulletproof vest to the Herald since she was able to be immortal thanks to the chrome. And as you take a look, one of the loopers was able to use the rocket. The Herald catches the rocket and chromes it, but then she is shot as more rocket launchers start to fire upon her. And as you can see, she explodes in contact, and everybody else is cheering. But all of a sudden, oh no, the chrome is growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And as you can take a look, the chrome has become a giant chrome woman, and there's no stopping it now, because as you take a look, she holds her hand like this, and boom, and it chromes everybody. And during the final moments of Reality Zero, you can see the chrome spread it across the tree. The loopers are now being reshaped, and as you take a look, the Herald merges with the reality tree and solidifies herself, petrifies herself in a way, and this happens. And mind you, Fracture is the very last time that the Herald is very active, and as a result of merging with the reality tree, it resulted in the reality tree becoming a detonation bomb connected to the 0 point, resulting in both islands, Apollo and Artemis, to explode in contact. And as a result of this, most of the surviving loopers that remained in Reality Zero are now currently in the last reality. And as a result of the already dormant 0 point, the Paradigm, Amy, and some of the surviving loopers are able to wake up the 0 point from dormancy. And as a result, the Paradigm has a bigger idea that in order to save all the inhabitants of Reality Zero and to rebuild all of Reality Zero as a whole, and to make sure that the last reality does not tamper with the 0 point again, she has to make the sacrificial choice of doing zero fusion, in which the scientists warned the Paradigm that zero fusion could take her life, because what zero fusion does is not only it uses almost all of the 0 point energy, and as a result, as of what happened of chapter 5, it exploded into shards after the fact because it has no more energy left. The Paradigm had to use most of her life energy as a backup other than the 0 point energy itself, because the Paradigm needs to hold on to the 0 point for a while. But since the Paradigm is not as strong as the Foundation, this is the reason why she unfortunately passed away, because of all of her life energy connected to the 0 point, which is already petrified, and the island. But during Fracture, as you take a look, as the 0 point is beginning to bring most of the chunks of what is left of Apollo and Artemis over there to create Asteria, you can see it brought a massive land chunk, and it shows what is left with the Herald. But we're able to see the same Herald tree once again in Fortnite Chapter 4 Season 1. After all of Asteria has been rebuilt, the Paradigm sacrifices her life in zero fusion. Reality Zero is rebuilt, it becomes Asteria, and in the middle of it, other than this one particular vault called Hidden Henge where the 0 point is kept in, which will later on reveal the petrified 0 point, you could see what is left with the Herald. And this is the biggest question that everybody in the Fortnite community and myself want to know. Is the Herald alive? And I could say, yes, the Herald is alive, and let me explain why. Despite that the Chrome is connected to the Herald in a way to make herself immortal, and she cannot die because the Chrome backs her up as a life support system that keeps her alive, it's very clear that even if she can actually turn herself into a petrified woman and actually disappear through the Chrome, as you can see from the trailer once again, when we first saw the Herald, it was actually just a slop of Chrome. And if you take a look at the Herald now, she's a solid form of Chrome, meaning she can actually turn to solid and liquid forms of Chrome at any time at will. And what is with the hole in the back of the tree? Well, I could tell you this. The tree in reality is actually hollow, like a chrysalis, because when it comes to metamorphosis, the Herald must have transformed into this form as you see in that survey skin. She probably transformed into this amber-like tree form because of the combinations of the reality tree, the 0 point energy, and the Chrome itself, which made Herald a lot more stronger. And as a result of this, since the Herald has gotten her new outfit, she was able to escape through on what is the remains of the Herald tree. And the death breaths are just like the remaining breaths that were trapped in when the Herald was petrifying herself in a way where it usually tricks everybody thinking that she died. And even if so, to this day, many of the Fortnite community still just tries to deny this whole conspiracy theory as if the Herald is alive like that. They still think that the Herald died because of the death breaths, because of her body still being petrified like that despite the hole in the back. Others are saying the Herald is alive because she was able to escape through and go back to the last reality where she can actually do her plans on her and the Nothing and Bytes, reshaping the rest of the 7 members, which are the Scientist, the Visitor, the Origin, and possibly the Snapshot imagined, and turn all of them into last reality members at will. And because of this, the Herald is actually alive, but back in the last reality. And it's unclear on when the Herald is going to return. Despite the survey skin you see here, I think the Herald might return sometime in the future. I'm not sure, unless Epic Games gives a huge update about like some promotion of the Herald coming back from after chroming most of the 7 members and then tries to fight back the Foundation and the 7 once again. Not only just using the Chrome, but this time with the power of Amber. That could mean another war against the 7 and the Loopers against the Herald and the rest of the last reality. Same way as where Dark Voyager is declaring war against the 7 and sneaking it behind, rebuilding the whole 0 point. If the Herald decides to come back once again, I could assure that she might fight back the 7 once again, especially trying to take the Foundation once again, especially the Order, the Visitor Unknown, Hope, Jones, and probably corrupt Amy again, since unfortunately for Amy, she is unsuccessful of trying to get the Scientist because it's already too late to save him and he's probably reshaped. But there could be other ways of saving the rest of the 7 members from the Chrome. Exceptions for the Imagined and the Paradigm, because the Imagined, she is confirmed to be deceased because she fell into the 0 point, and the Paradigm because she gave her life to the 0 point, and as a result, she used all of her life force to keep the Asteria Island up and running. And as of Chapter 4 Season 4 to Chapter 5, as the Asteria imploded because of the last reality's responsibility, it resulted in the Paradigm's life force gone forever, meaning she is no longer controlling the whole island because it's destroyed, and as a result, we haven't seen the Paradigm since Amy confirmed that she sacrificed herself to Zero Fusion, and the only Paradigm we can think of right now is the Singularity, the Guardian of the Vault, and most of all, an IO member, since she's one of the oldest members of the Imagined Order, and is soon to replace the Paradigm, and probably, if the Herald does in fact return in this state, I could assure that the Singularity will take revenge against the Herald for what she did, and for causing the Paradigm to use this sacrifice in order to save all of reality. But at the end of the day, Reality Zero no longer exists. Unless if the 0 point is fully liberated by the 7 from the Dark Voyager and the Ice King, surrendering to the 7. That could mean a new era for Fortnite's storyline, and as a result, the reconstruction of the 4th iteration of Reality Zero pretty soon. And I don't know if this is the case, but it all depends on how they do. And it all depends on how well the last reality does on rebuilding a 0 point, and if so, then the Herald could appear earlier, but if they're unsuccessful most of the time, then the Herald would be their backup, especially when Dark Voyager is probably going to get more weaker thanks to the Foundation. She would have to call backup for the last reality, including the Herald and the Q Queen if they're able to find her in time. But guys, let me know in the comments below, how do you think the Herald will return, especially in Chapter 7? And if she doesn't return in Chapter 7, would she return in Chapter 8 or sometime in the future in Fortnite? Let me know. And most of all, comment below if you think the Herald is dead or is she alive, because it is a huge debate that we're trying to ask questions to Epic Games and the entire Fortnite community as a whole, because her status is still determined. Let me know. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time for another Fortnite Origins discussion.